me for my notes. I'm better behind the scenes than in front. A young man in high school started a national student movement, and he was dedicated to identifying, organizing, and empowering young people to promote the principles of free markets and limited government. With a presence of over 2,000 high schools, college campuses nationwide, 250,000 student members, and over 450 full and part-time staff, Charlie Kirk, founder of Turning Point USA, is the largest and fastest growing conservative youth movement activist group in the country. Again, let's give Charlie Kirk a Visalia welcome.
By the way, you're going to get your money's worth tonight. For multiple reasons. I am not in a good mood tonight. Good.
Get him.
It's the greatest present of my lifetime. Just got booked at a mugshot in Fulton County, Georgia. I'm pissed as hell. I'll tell you that. Unbelievable. Duly elected President of the United States has to be perp walked for the 4th time in a couple months. We'll get to that. First of all, thank you for welcoming me so wonderfully and beautifully. I love small town America, and honestly, this is America at its best. And so you have all been so great and so generous and so kind. And thank you to the organizers. I know they've had to deal with a lot of stuff, and they've been really great. So thank you. So let's dive right into it. First of all, we're going to do question and answer at some point, and that'll be really fun because if you disagree, you get to go to the front of the line, so we can have some fun there. I told you, you're getting your money's worth. So, I'm curious, if the primary were held today, raise your hand, who would vote for Donald Trump? Who would raise your hand? Almost every single hand goes up. Yeah. That's when somebody asked me, hey, what do you think about the debate last night? Like, it really didn't matter, honestly. But let me give you a couple takeaways. First of all, I think Vivek did very well last night. There was something missing, not just Trump, missing from the debate last night. And what was missing is if you would have just woke up from a coma and watched that debate, you heard a little bit of a whisper here or there. But I didn't feel rage or condemnation from the people on stage about the diabolical and evil assault on the rule of law and the United States Constitution that is occurring right now. And it's not just Trump. I'm going to go through all of it, top to bottom, to the best of my memory and my recollection. But, you know, I hear from people every so often, oh, Charlie, I don't like Trump, I don't like his tweets, I don't like his ego. I really am not interested in your opinion of Donald Trump. You could hate Donald Trump. I honestly believe that. Do you love the Constitution more than you hate Donald Trump? That is the question that is in front of us. Because what is happening here is they are trying to refound the country. The same way that our founders had a 1776 moment, they look at this as their 1776 moment. They don't like the Constitution. Just this week, there was an op-ed in the New York Times that said elections are bad for democracy. In the Atlantic, they had a piece that said, Americans vote too much, why we should get rid of voting. This is not a joke, you can fact check me on all this. By the way, we're not a democracy, we are a republic, and the distinction is very important. This is taken at face value. But what are they really saying here? They're trying to change the country. Barack Obama famously said a couple days before the election in 2008, we are just days away from fundamentally transforming America. from 15 days to slow the spread, to Floydapalooza, to the time to today, you are living through a cultural revolution. Now, some people don't like it when I talk like this. They say, oh, Charlie, just do the happy talk thing. Do Republicans good, Democrats bad. If you don't have the stomach for this, that's fine. Because this is tough stuff. This is a harder reality than I think some people are willing to acknowledge and admit. The reality is that the country you grew up in is not around anymore. But we can get it back. We can defeat these people. But you first must acknowledge that there's something happening that is intentionally confusing, overwhelming. They're trying to demoralize you. They're trying to bring down your spirit. They're trying to make you think in cycles and circles of negativity. And part of this refounding of the nation is it started when all of a sudden out of nowhere, we were told that church was non-essential. We were told that marijuana clinics, strip clubs, and department stores are essential more than gathering on Easter or on Pentecost. The refounding of the nation started when they masked an entire generation and forced an mRNA gene-altering shot on them because of a virus that had a 99.9% survival rate for their cohort, which then created the most suicidal, alcohol-addicted, and drug-addicted generation in history. In the midst of all of that, we had nonstop peddling of narratives saying America was systemically racist from the beginning. We tore down the statues of Thomas Jefferson, Teddy Roosevelt, and George Washington. We created this national boiling point, but what I'm here to tell you is it never actually went away. See, Joe Biden campaigned on being the healing president. He campaigned on bringing us all together, when in reality, his inauguration was a declaration of war against you. Since he has become president of the United States, we have seen a young man, Douglas Mackey, who faces 10 years in federal prison for making a meme in the 2016 election because he made fun of Hillary Clinton. In Michigan, this is a story that people do not know, 16 senior citizens are facing 50 to 70 years in prison for signing a document for being an alternate elector in the 2020 election, including 81-year-old Rose Rook from Paw Paw, Michigan, who has $30,000 to her name. Steve Bannon is going to go to federal prison soon. We've seen James O'Keefe raided and taken out at Project Veritas. We've seen Tucker Carlson taken off his amazingly successful cable news channel. We have seen January 6 defendants in pre-trial gulags for years before they even get a fair hearing in front of a judge. What is going on here? The answer is the Cultural Revolution is going straight for the rule of law, otherwise called as lawfare. If you look around, I'm sure some of you would say, Charlie, I don't recognize the country anymore. That's the point. It's intentional. They're trying to break your will. They're trying to turn the back on it. And here's the sad reality for some of you, but it's the reality. It's that there's only one vessel to send a message to these people left, and it's not Nikki Haley. It's not Mike Pence. Not a fan? 600 years he faces in federal prison. What's his crime? Because he didn't maintain documents the right way, because they made a phone call they don't like, because he challenged an election, despite the fact that every major Democrat in my lifetime have challenged an election repeatedly. Every single one of these Democrats. No. His crime, they're not actually putting on the indictment papers. His crime is that he was never supposed to win the 2016 election. Hillary Clinton was supposed to be president. He was never supposed to get 3 Supreme Court justices. He was never supposed to get Brett Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett, and Neil Gorsuch. His crime was not just winning. His crime was that he was not like every other Republican after he won. You see, after he won, he was given an opportunity to kind of do what most Republicans do, which is betray you, the voters, when they go to Washington, D.C., and become something completely and totally different. He went to Washington, D.C., and he said, wait a second, why are we in this Parent Climate Accord? Why is the embassy not in Jerusalem? Why don't we redo NAFTA? Why don't we hold China accountable? Why don't we put the middle class first? Why do we keep on doing the same silly, stupid thing with our foreign policy? Why do we have these unelected bureaucrats running the country? Why don't we have stronger conservatives on the Supreme Court? And he asked the right questions, and it drove the regime nuts. You see, there was this plan that was hatched to allow the fourth branch of government, the administrative state, the unelected, the people that you never voted for, they never campaigned, they never canvassed, that are largely unknown to the American people. This is the FBI, the CIA, the Department of Justice, to have unlimited amounts of power. You see, it was supposed to be, it's important to remember, and it kind of came back to me when I was watching that Republican debate. It was supposed to be Jeb Bush versus Hillary Clinton. That's what you were supposed to choose from, which is basically the same thing. They agree on everything when it comes to foreign policy. They agree that the border should remain open. They agree on all that. And what they did not expect, what terrified them, was a billionaire developer coming down a golden escalator and blowing up the entire party. And they tried with protest, and they tried with intimidation, and they tried with name calling, and they tried with smear, and they tried with two impeachments, and they spied on him, and they launched the Russiagate. They were Russia hoax, and thing after thing after thing after thing. But there was always something in our mind, we were like, they're not actually going to go after him criminally, will they? It's like, come on, you won't go that far. They will. Because he's that big of a threat. Now, you're a very smart audience. You guys know this. There's a global game at play here. This is not just about, red states. This is about the WHO. This is about the World Economic Forum. This is about the United Nations. This is about something much bigger than just Republican versus Democrat. So I watched that debate last night, and Vivek Ramaswamy was the only one with the courage to say, hey, Donald Trump was a great president. Like, good for you, Vivek. Thank you for saying that. You would have guessed that every single one of those people, they want nothing to do with the man that prevented Hillary Clinton from becoming president of the United States. That alone, by the way, should put him on the modern Mount Rushmore. I'm not kidding. That alone. By preventing that craven criminal from becoming president of the United States. One of the most despicable people in public life is Hillary Clinton. And so we have a choice, and we're in front of it now. In the Republican primary, it's largely a waste of time, to be honest. Most of that money should be spent on investing in Arizona, Wisconsin, and Georgia, on ballot chasing and securing our elections and getting rid of mass mail-in voting and making sure that we actually have election integrity. But Donald Trump will win the primary. And you can see in this room the enthusiasm, the energy, the spirit, the vigor. And you looked last night, you're like, yeah, our B team is good luck. Good luck with that. And I know that there's some not Trump fans in the audience that are Republicans here tonight. And what I want to just try to emphasize with all of you is that this is a much bigger game now than Donald J. Trump. This is a 100-year project that they have been launching, where Woodrow Wilson started this idea of the administrative state. Woodrow Wilson, one of America's worst presidents, who was a college professor from Princeton University, who ended up becoming New Jersey's governor and won in really kind of a sneaky election in 1912 because Teddy Roosevelt ran as a third-party candidate against the incumbent William Howard Taft and split the Republican vote, and Woodrow Wilson won with like 44% of the vote. Snuck in, and Woodrow Wilson was the first American president to basically say the American founders didn't really have it right. We need a permanent bureaucracy. We need a permanent administrative state that is immune from the pressures of politics. This was this idea of what we now call the deep state. 109 years ago, the idea of the deep state started. That very deep state, in my opinion, was behind the assassination of JFK. That very deep state was behind the removal of Richard Nixon. That very deep state tried to take out Donald Trump. And what it is it's this non-stop attack on the sovereignty of the people. And it goes from generation to generation. Who runs the country? Does J. Edgar Hoover run the country or the people? And you might have felt like the people run the country, but Richard Nixon won one of the most triumphant political elections in American history, and he was removed from office 18 months later. 18 months. Now, I'm not like a Richard Nixon defender. I actually think history doesn't treat him fairly because he was actually a pretty good president. However, he definitely made some mistakes. But Richard Nixon engaged in child's play versus what Joe and Hunter Biden have done to this country. Child's play. And they say, oh, Watergate and all this, but they were they wanted a check on the American people. And through this check, we've seen it decade after decade, generation after generation, that fourth branch of government only gets stronger, only gets bigger. 9/11 happens. And our reaction to 9/11 was to create this massive leviathan to go after terrorists, which all of us supported, obviously. The problem is that there's a supply and demand problem with terrorism. Eventually, you run out of terrorists to hunt. So now you are the terrorists.
Yep.
Moms and dads who show up to school boards are called domestic terrorists. They say in the FBI documents that the #1 threat to the American homeland is domestic violent right-wing extremism. You. Not Antifa, not BLM, not gang murders in our cities, but you. Right-wing domestic violent extremist terrorists. And this is all part of the plan now where they've taken over the Leviathan and they want to eliminate the decent half of the country. Eliminate your voice and put your mascot, your symbol, the one person that you have a connection to, the one person that has not backed down, the one person that has not sold out, Donald Trump, on a public trial. And it's all to break your spirit. But, it's not over. Because we have one thing that these people hate, they're trying to get rid of, it's the United States Constitution. And our founders gave us a tricky little thing called elections, where you have to win a series of states. Thank goodness for the Electoral College. I know you guys in California might not like it. You should like it, by the way, if you're a conservative. The Electoral College is a brilliant creation that decentralizes elections and allows states to have a voice, because the states created a federal government. The federal government did not create the states. Where now Donald Trump will be the nominee facing 600 years in prison. When Joe Biden, by the way, should be in federal prison for the crime. He's a traitor to this country. Joe Biden is a traitor to this country. And you have to just win in really 7 counties in 3 states, Arizona, Wisconsin, Georgia. They're indicting him because they're panicking, because the counties that need to win, the places they need to do it, they are afraid they can't replicate what happened in 2020. They are terrified that what 2020 was a combination of Central Intelligence Agency, FBI, DHS, Zucker boxes, mass mail-in ballots, signature verification standards being relaxed, absolute chaos in the streets, them lying about the Hunter Biden laptop as quote-unquote Russian disinformation. They are terrified that they can't pull off a 2.0, and that is why COVID is coming back. You notice that? Get your masks on, everybody. Now, for the media that is here, that's writing everything, let me just be very clear. I think I speak for everybody. We will not comply. We will not comply. Jokes about it. It's just kind of the way that we should handle the program thing. Yeah, I'm not calling you by that. It's not going to happen. So, it's not going to happen. I'm going to keep walking. I'm going to run my business. I'm going to go to church. I'm not going to wear your stupid mask. Not going to happen. They can't arrest all of us. They can't come on that. Not going to happen. We will not comply. We will not comply. Period. So all of a sudden, you have Lester Holt at NBC News. Well, COVID is coming back. Mask mandates at Rutgers University, Atlanta local schools, hospitals are now redoing the mask thing. It's coming back. And they say, oh, well, go get your latest booster. Hold on, time out. If the vaccine was 100% safe and effective, why do we have to keep on getting boosters every single time? Oh, because the virus changes and it mutates. Right. Or you just want to keep on getting profits every 9 months for your failed shot that you put on young people and you're afraid to actually tell us the truth about. Pfizer's profits are down 23% in the last year. Look deeper, look closer. I don't know about you, but I don't trust a thing out of these pharmaceutical companies anymore. I don't trust Pfizer, I don't trust AstraZeneca, I don't trust Moderna, I don't trust Johnson & Johnson. This is a positive thing. The people are starting to wake up. This is why they're going to try everything they possibly can. 600 years in federal prison, indictments, Jack Smith, indict top, bottom, everything. John Eastman, Rudy Giuliani, America's mayor, they have indicted. Mark Meadows, an honorable man who was chief of staff. Nobody is off limits. That is how desperate they are to cling on to power, because they hate your value system that much. They need to bring in a globalist type agenda. They need to bring forth cultural Marxism here. And they do not understand one thing, and this is your message of hope tonight. No matter how much they throw at you, for whatever reason, the ordinary person, the everyday American, is not giving up and is only fighting harder. And it's driving them nuts. They are trying to break their will every day. They say, why do you guys keep on showing up to events? Why do you keep on supporting people? Because we don't listen to you anymore. because there's a whole new movement that is brewing up in this country, and I have no idea how this is going to work out. And so I get asked every single day, Charlie, are we going to win in 2024? Are we going to win? Are we going to win? Part of this is we're over-fixated on political type stuff, and I'm totally in support of early vote, bank your vote, really important. I mean that. You guys have to use everything you possibly can legally to win these elections. And so, but to emphasize, are we going to win in 2024? I'm not an optimist, I'm not a pessimist. I'll get into that in a second. I'm straight down the middle. I have no idea. It could go either way. But here's the more important question that I think we need to ask ourselves. If it doesn't go your way, are you going to give up? And that's an important question, because if they highway rob it again and do a drive-by shooting of the United States Constitution in broad daylight, are they going to be able to break our will? And that, if they are able to break our will, I can tell you this, the reinforcements are coming. We are on hundreds of campuses just here in the West, and tons in California, thousands nationwide. We have never seen such a conservative freshman class in the history of Turning Point USA as the one that we've seen ever. Especially, and the data shows this, young boys. Young boys are the most conservative high school graduating class in American history. And the media, it's so funny reading these media articles. Researchers and experts perplexed why young boys are trending conservative. Well, let me see. The Netflix stuff is like super gay. The Hulu stuff is against other men. Like everything in our culture is about men becoming women. Maybe young boys are all of a sudden finding Joe Rogan and Peter Attia and Jordan Peterson and Matt Walsh, and they want somebody to tell them that it's okay to be a man. We need strong men in this country. I don't understand. The media is super confused. Who would want to be a man? That's basically what they're saying. Well, apparently a lot of women want to be men. I always laugh when some man says, I'm a woman. I'm like, you don't want to be a woman. Trust me, like, you don't want to be a woman. They can't answer the question, what is a woman? Because of course they can't, right? Because then it gets down to biological autonomy. I give him a shout out all the time. Matt Walsh deserves hero praise for his movie, What is a Woman? So there's some amazingly promising trends, everybody. But we must remember, do not just fall for the Trump v. Biden. Bigger game at play. Yes. This is the deep state, the Leviathan, the shadow government versus the people. That is what is going on here. Who calls the shots? They've been waging an all-out war in the United States Constitution for 100 years. And now sometimes when I talk like this, I get messages, I get emails, they say, ooh, Charlie, I don't like the way you talk. It's really intense. I don't remember this country. And I mean this sincerely. If you go back home and you go like, whoa, that was a lot. I don't know if I'm cut out for this. You are what the founding fathers called a sunshine patriot. And that's okay. Being weak and being a coward is understandable. Just don't get in our way. Go watch the Niners game, and I'll tell you when the Marxists are defeated. This is too intense. Is this going to require work on Saturday? Yeah. Founding fathers said, we pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. You are living through their attempt to refound the country. And it's all coming at once. I look at it totally differently, by the way. I say how blessed I am toward the Almighty God. How thankful I am that I get to live during a time where everything I do matters so much. Where the existence, the survival, the prosperity of the greatest nation ever to exist in the history of the world is on our shoulders. What a time to be alive. That's a totally different way of looking at it. That every conversation you have, every door you knock on, everything you do plays an impact. And for those of you that say, oh, it's just too much for me, then you know what? That's fine. But then tell that to your granddaughter. Tell that to your daughter. Tell them that their future is not worth your sacrifice and your commitment. Now, I know some of you are here tonight. You're probably saying, Charlie, I've done all. Okay, I've knocked on the doors, I ballot chased, I contribute to the local organizations, I bought the pillow, I've done everything that I need to do, okay? by the way, at mypillow.com. Okay? Look, it's going to require a little bit more than the Giza Dream Sheets to save the Republic.
But we can dream. We can always take the fill the greens.
My call to action for you tonight, before we get to some questions, is we must cease being spectators and we must start being participants. And there is no guarantee of victory. Some of you are going to run for school board and you're going to be smeared, slandered, doxxed, and your kids will kicked out of social circles. You keep fighting. Onward. Some of you are going to donate more money than you ever have to these causes and you're going to be woefully disappointed. So what? Pick yourself up. Onward. Do not be a sunshine patriot. And if you are, just get out early. Be honest with yourself. But if you are the type of person where you're like, this feels so wrong in my soul. When you see the grooming of kids, when you see the porn in our schools, when you see the castration of minors, when you see the wide open southern border, when you see the sex trafficking of kids, as detailed in the wonderful movie Sound of Freedom, and then the media covers it up. The media says, oh, it doesn't exist. It's a conspiracy theory. Oh, really? What was Epstein? Exactly. And who was on Epstein's client list? Oh, the media doesn't like talking about that. Because Bill Clinton was on Epstein's client list. Start asking the right questions, all of a sudden you make the right enemies. Remember that. Here's another truism for you in this age. Nobody gets in trouble for lying. Anthony Fauci gets promoted. Peter Strzok gets promoted. Joe Biden gets promoted. You know who gets in trouble? The people who tell the truth.
Yeah. Yep.
You speak the truth about what the regime is doing, they will try and crush you. James O'Keefe. They'll try and crush you. Tucker Carlson. And you might say, well, Charlie, they're going to try to crush every single one of us. We're not immune to it. But they're not going to break my will or your will. In fact, these are bullies. And these are rather fragile bullies. And I'll close with this. The one thing we have not done as a movement well enough is we've not played offense. We are inherently defensive players, constantly retreating. This is why they hate Trump, because he's the first one to say, we're coming after you. We're going to play offense. We're going to win so much you're going to get sick of winning. And I believe this in my soul. I believe it at a fundamental level. We outnumber them. There are more of us than them. I really believe that. And it only takes time to make that manifest into reality. So, am I an optimist? Well, if I tell you that we're going to win, you're going to go home and say, I don't have to do anything because Charlie said that we're going to win. If I say that I'm a pessimist, like, oh, forget it, the world is ending, and there's no point. It's like, oh, Charlie said the world is ending, and no point. By the way, let me just say this. I am a very serious Christian. The most important thing in my life. Those of you that believe that Jesus is coming next Thursday.
Amen.
Good. But don't act like it. Do not let your eschatology be an excuse for inaction. Never give the excuse that I will not donate, I will not support, I will not do something because I think that we're in the end times. It should be the opposite answer. It should be, boy, things are falling apart. I gotta do more. What do you want to be caught doing when Jesus returns? So instead, I'm going to give you the moderate middle answer. I have no idea how this is going to end. It's wholly dependent on our action. It's wholly dependent on what we do. It's wholly dependent on the relationships we form, the school boards we influence, the kids we rise up, the young leaders we support, the elections that we get engaged with. That's the most empowering message I can give you. Because I think far too often we think that there's these master forces out there beyond our control. And there are puppeteers and there are all of that. But never think for a second that you and your action, your duty, your obligation is insignificant. If you believe that, then the bad guys have already won. What they fear is millions of people. All it's going to take is 3% of the country to turn this thing back to normalcy. 3%. 3% of the country. The rest can go watch the 49ers game or do whatever they do. To believe that they have an obligation to the divine, to act courageously and boldly. And that's why I know you guys are here tonight. Let's do some questions, and God bless you guys. Thank you. Okay, I think we have some microphones. Let's start lining up. We're going to go quite a while. You guys can just line right up to the microphone. So please go right up to the microphone. Thank you. God bless you. So please start just making a queue up here for the microphone, and if anyone does disagree, welcome to the front of the line. Please kind of come right up to the mic. Thank you. We'll start a little line here and okay, come on up. Can we get lights here? Is that possible on the questions? Okay. Yep. Is there someone here to regulate the mics? Okay. Sure. We're gonna go here first. We're going here first. Okay. Yeah.
All right. Well, hello, Charlie. My name's David. So just for everybody, that's Charlie Kirk. My name is David. I don't think we look that much alike. So people stop asking me to take pictures. This is right there. One of the main things that I'd like for you to talk about is about your program, Run Gen Z. About I always say, not the next generation stepping up, but the current generation, and having those before us actually support. So if that's something you can talk about, I'm part of Run Gen Z. I'm assigned to somebody. I'm running right now, as Dini has stated. So if you could talk a little bit about that and just kind of encourage some people to support those who want and are part of that Harvard study that are looking at young men trying to step up for the state.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's great. So I'm starting to see more and more young people, and by the way, feel free to line up, guys, on this side if you want, for some questions. I'm seeing more and more young people run for office. In fact, we have our first Turning Point alumni, Congresswoman Ana Paulina Luna, who is a member of Congress now. She's doing a great job, isn't she? She's making Turning Point very popular. We need to support the next generation running for office. I love Run Gen Z, and if you're a young person out there, you're not too young to run for office. That's one of the reasons why I like Vivek Ramaswamy running for office. It shows a fresher face, younger vibe, and so I'm very supportive of Run Gen Z. Yes, sir.
Charlie, you spoke about 4 different elections that I believe were taken by cheating or whatever word. Let's talk about Philadelphia, Illinois, Georgia, and Arizona. How, going forward, I don't see the RNC stepping up and trying to get us back to where all our votes count. What can you do, or what can we do to keep the cheating Democrats from winning this thing?
So I'm a guest here, so I'm going to be very nice about the RNC today. You guys can listen to my show for my commentary there, but I'm going to be respectful of our hosts here. But I will say this, we need to do a lot more in Arizona, Wisconsin, and Georgia. We're trying to do our part. Instead of this primary, let me just tell you a specific thing of what we should do. Governor Ron DeSantis is sitting on $110 million right now. I have been, let's just say, rather disappointed in this presidential campaign. Governor Ron DeSantis should drop out of the race and spend all $110 million to secure our elections and hire grassroots workers and chase ballots in Arizona, Wisconsin, and Georgia. He would be a hero in the movement if he did that. Instead of $110 million to go run up against Trump, we are so starving for resources right now. And to have Tim Scott have $60 million to go spend on some vanity project, this is a waste of time. And meanwhile, the Democrats have no primary for a reason, because they're going to spend their precious resources, of which they have like 5x the money that we have, on what we call the boring stuff, which is mass mail-in balloting and ballot chasers and suing in these districts. And so we're trying to do our best at Turning Point Action, right? We're kind of a newer 501c4 political organization. We're doing what we call Chase the Vote, or ballot chasers in Arizona. I live in Arizona, specifically in Arizona. And it's a change of philosophy. Back in the midterm elections of 2022, we were telling everyone to go vote on election day. And honestly, it's why Kari Lake is not governor. It's like our failed strategy. I believe Kari Lake is the duly elected governor of Arizona. She's a terrific. However, there was mass voter disenfranchisement that happened, where I went to go vote in Scottsdale, and it was a 2.5-hour waiting list to go vote in Scottsdale on election day. It was people walking away in disgust, upset, and maybe you're not even convinced by that. Our Attorney General's race in Arizona was decided by 250 votes. And so if you have this massive waiting issue, and so we have to start to expand the voting horizon, but I am not yet convinced that we have the proper strategy in Fulton County, Georgia, or Cobb County, in Milwaukee County or Maricopa, to stop their cheating. And I'm open for ideas. This is why I think we need to close the primary, stop this circus, and we need a war room and spend this money on that. I can only do so much, right? I would have rather seen, instead of a debate last night, I would have them say, hey, you know what? We're not fans of Trump. You like Trump. We hate Biden. We hate Biden more than we hate Trump. Let's focus all of our precious resources. You tally everybody up on the stage. They have a combined about $400 million in super PAC money that's going to be spent against Donald Trump. What a waste.
Yeah, what a waste.
That money could be spent. If that money was spent today, we would defeat Joe Biden, guaranteed. Instead, we're doing a really foolish thing, to be perfectly honest, which is a consultant-driven vanity project that will result in the same outcome. Yes, sir.
Well, my first election was 1980, and I had the honor of serving the Reagan campaign at the Western White House in Santa Barbara. That is where I learned how to fight back. My question, imitation is the most sincere form of flattery, and we hear the Democrats talk an awful lot about the Russians. A lot of people don't know it, but in the last few weeks, the opposition candidate in Russia was sentenced to 19 more years in prison. That is how Russians silence debate and silence the opposition. The Democrats have learned really, really well from what the Russians are doing. And that is what we are seeing, I believe, right now with these 4 DAs. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I've said clearly that this regime acts more like Vladimir Putin than Vladimir Putin does. And I mean, the media attacks me when I say that. I say, hold on a second. The satirist and the humorist Douglas Mackey, 10 years in federal prison. Leading opposition strategist Steve Bannon going to federal prison. Alternate electors, federal prison. Donald Trump facing 600 years in federal prison during an actual election. We sanction countries for how our own government is acting against the Republican conservative movement. We are lectured by Tony Blinken. Oh, it's very evil what Vladimir Putin is doing. And yet it's totally excusable when Merrick Garland and the Department of Justice do it against our own active candidates. Just so you know how unprecedented this is, there was a long-standing policy in the Department of Justice that if you're an active presidential candidate, you will not experience any indictments, regardless of political party. They decided to just throw that away. They're like, yeah, we hate Trump more than this policy. This is so grotesque, it's so unprecedented. And yeah, I mean, our government is Soviet, Maoist, whatever you want to call. And I have to be lectured. And by the way, I have very strong opinions on the Ukraine thing. I think it's insane for us to send money to Ukraine while our own southern border is completely that, well, the biggest threat to democracy is Vladimir Putin. Like, no, actually you are. Like, Joe Biden is the biggest threat to American democracy, even though we're not a democracy. American voting, American elections. So, great point. Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to say, I already said it once, but thank you for coming here. We all appreciate the community. Secondly, I've been trying to think for probably 2 weeks now to ask you. I could probably ask 15 different questions, but I'm going to ask only a couple. First of all, I'm wondering how in the world, as such a great nation of ours, let something like the NSA be formed. I know that we're in fear of terrorism, and people are in fear of their families and their homes, and that's understandable. But to my knowledge, and the way I look at it, it breaks definitely the First Amendment, Fourth, Fifth Amendment, and probably 10 others. So that's my first one. I'd like to hear your point on.
So it breaks form with what? The NSA, you said? Or?
The NSA, yeah. It breaks multiple amendments.
Yeah, I mean, so look, how old are you?
23.
You're 23. Okay, so, no, I ask, I'm not meaning that in a negative way. I'm 29. And I can tell you that's funny, So, the moral panic. So you remember COVID, how people were scared? Multiply that by 10. That was the days after 9/11. Is that fair? Yeah. I think that, and I remember it as a 7-year-old. Literally, I remember the fear, it was palpable, even more than the height of COVID. And it was bipartisan. There was no like anti-mask, thing. Everyone was in full agreement. So you're asking the question, how did we let that happen? Imagine a year of fear. And it wasn't unsubstantiated. I remember that I was at school and they canceled school for a week after 9/11 because we weren't sure if all of a sudden schools were going to start getting blown up, right? And the bad guys, specifically Robert Mueller, who was the head of the FBI, he transformed the FBI from a law enforcement agency to an intelligence agency. And exactly, spying, that's exactly right. So the intelligence agency is code for we're going to spy on them. Does the FBI have a role in law enforcement? Of course they do, right? I just wish they would do that more than spying on American citizens and going after political dissidents. And so it changed, and now we look back. This is a really important lesson, and I'm afraid we haven't learned it very well. When we are captured by fear, we make really bad legislative decisions. Whether it be after 2008, whether it be during COVID and spending all this money we don't have and locking us down, or 9/11. Look at how many regrettable policy decisions we've made in the last 20 plus years when we let fear be the driver of our politics. So that's the answer to your question. Thank you. Sorry I can't get to the other ones. Only one per person. Sorry.
Hey, good evening, Charlie. Actually, Fresno City College, chapter leader for CPD. So, my question, right, and this is a big talking point I use with other students to get them exposed to new ideas, is giving you specific examples of what conservatives are for. So my question to you is, if you could snap your fingers and create your ideal tax reform, what would it look like? Would it be a flat tax? Would it be a negative income tax? Something along those lines?
Yeah, it's funny. I don't think much about the conservative movement has changed so much. When I got started in 2012, we used to talk about things like taxes and debts and deficits. Now we're talking about like existential survival of the republic. This has changed a lot. Yeah, look, I'm a pretty simple guy. I'm not a policy wonk. Like I don't overthink about policy because I'd rather just win and then we can figure it out. But I'm 10% across the board. The Bible says 10%. I think everyone should pay a 10% tax. I think that's the most fair.
Charlie, thank you for being here. Can everybody give him a hand real quick for being here? So, where is your Raider fan? Anyways, I'm just joking. I don't know if he's a Raider fan or not. But I just want to say, I look around and I see my Hispanic brothers in here, I see my Caucasian brothers in here. How do we get my folks in here? How do we get the African American community in here to represent, to push hard, to talk about the things of Christ, to talk about our children, to talk about, you don't have to take a vaccine, because when I go to LA and I'm with my auntie, I'm my uncle, everything that has to do with Republicans, oh, that's racism, oh, that's white supremacy, that's so on and so forth. Holler at me, Charlie, because I need some answers on this.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. Let me do two things.
Do it.
Number one, most Republicans are deathly afraid of speaking to all black audiences because they're afraid of being called racist. I'm not kidding. That's not an excuse. That's stupid. I'll speak in front of anyone at any time. I speak in front of all black audiences, all Hispanic audiences, because we're all human beings made in the image of God. I don't care what skin color. Number two, you got to understand it goes both ways. That black audiences are not always necessarily receptive of Republicans going and speaking. I speak for a living, okay? I do 3 hours of radio a day. I've given over 3,000 speeches, literally, in the last decade. I can handle myself. Most politicians are deathly afraid of going on a local news channel, let alone going and confronting black voters. They get intimidated and run away. And part of it is this cartel, this cabal, run by Al Sharpton and BLM, where they weaponize the black community for the American Democrat cause. I think this can change. I'm seeing it change already on TikTok and YouTube. I'm starting to see it change with black cultural figures that are starting to speak out against this trans delusion that is sweeping the country. I see it with Brandon Tatum and Candace Owens. I see it more and more and more. And I'm not saying it's going to be a majority, but the first way I think we have to do it is all in on black men. Black men have been so mistreated by the regime in so many different ways. I don't even just mean on the crime issue. I mean that the entire American Democrat Party has told black men that you are not necessary. That you aren't worthy. And so there's so many different things that need to happen here. For number one, I think we as Republicans need to play offense. And the number one reason why conservatives don't, and you said it, is because most conservatives, and you could say it doesn't matter to you, but you're probably lying. They really care when they get called racist. They do. It damages them because it's not true. You see what I'm saying? So, because if you get called something that's not true, it really hurts you, right? That's not who I am. And then you all of a sudden are in this cope cycle of, no, I promise I'm not a racist. You're already losing. You're losing, right? So, all those things need to change, but I have some hope. And this is one of the reasons why I think that they're indicting Trump and all this. And by the way, we're seeing polling that young black men are increasing their support of Donald Trump post these indictments. It's really interesting. But the one issue that I think we got to go all in with, where it does not fly in the black community is this idea that men can give birth. This is a uniquely white liberal phenomenon. Am I right? This is a uniquely white liberal phenomenon. You want to win black and Hispanic voters? Go into the black and Hispanic neighborhoods and say, we will not infect your kids with white liberalism. That works. Malcolm X, who is a mixed bag in some ways, but Malcolm X came out and he said, the greatest threat to the black community will come dressed as a white liberal. And he was right.
Amen.
White liberals have done more harm and more damage to black America, and now they're coming in, they're like, well, we're going to make the black community trans. Like, that's not going to work. And you start to see with Ice Cube speaking out. You see with all these big rappers. So we have to be unafraid to be called a racist. We have to be unafraid of uncomfortable conversations, but not pandering. Pandering, black people don't want. They want to be treated as equals with dignity and to go in there and say, hey, we're all human beings. I think that's a winning message. God bless you, man. Thank you very much. Again, if you disagree, feel free to come line or whatever. So.
First of all, let me just say we really appreciate you being here tonight. I just acquired the Biblical Civics course from Patriot Academy. And it's information, it's education, and along with the biblical perspective on worldview. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing it with hundreds of churches and pastors. If you go to a church that is not speaking out on these issues, you need to leave that church. You need to find a pastor who is bold and courageous. And I'll just say this, lovingly accept this. You didn't come here tonight to hear happy talk, right? If, somebody asked me recently, they said, Charlie, when is God going to work a miracle in this country? And I said, well, let me ask you a question. Did your pastor thank God when the decision of Roe versus Wade was overturned? If your pastor did not mention it, then you're not being led well. Maybe God has already worked miraculously, and we had too much pride and arrogance to say thank you. I was told by a leader of the pro-life movement 5 years ago, Charlie, Roe versus Wade will never be repealed. They said it would take a miracle the likes of which the Red Sea being parted. Well, it happened. And 90% of American pastors did not mention the reversal of Roe versus Wade from their pulpit. That's one example of hundreds. 90% of American pastors should resign from the ministry because they're cowards. Because they're not speaking morally clearly or theologically clearly. People say, oh, Charlie, that means you want the church to be political. No, I want the church to be biblical. I want the church to speak out with courage for such a time as this. Okay? I can't remember what side I'm on. I think I'm on this side, right?
On this side. After this question, we only have time for 2 more after that.
Okay.
Hi Charlie, my name is Isaac. So I'm a senior in high school right now, and back in 2020 I started a Sweet Skins Trafficking Club at my high school, and we raised awareness about human trafficking. And I know you kind of touched on it, talking about Bill Clinton and Epstein and his island and stuff, but my question is, I just don't understand why it's so hard for the left to understand that God's children aren't for sale. And I know in the Sound of Freedom movie, they kind of, not silencing it, but they didn't speak out on it, and I was just wondering if you could expand on that, or give your opinion.
Cool. So it's the most important existential question in front of us, which is, what is a human being? We as conservative or Christians believe that a human being is made in the image of God, with a soul. They don't believe that. They believe a human being is an accident of millions of years of Darwinian evolution and a clump of cells that happen to mature into something with reason. Humans are expendable to them. They always have been. Joseph Stalin, abortion, 60 million people crushed in the womb. For what? For political power, for purpose, for pleasure? Doesn't matter. They all have their reason. So why would they get worked up with child sex trafficking? It's all a game. The only kids they care about are kids that they try to groom in schools to turn them into the trans agenda. That's the only kids they care about. That's why they have to do the drag shows. The LGBTQ mafia cannot have kids of their own, so they must recruit your kids and groom them into their ranks. And so back to the child sex trafficking thing, It's a huge issue. It's happening in real time. Our government doesn't care, our regime doesn't care, and the media comes out and they say, oh, it's a QAnon conspiracy theory. Maybe they're in on it. Thanks so much. I can go a little bit longer. I don't know what the time is.
My name is Haley. I'm the Vice President for the CLS College Republicans. And my question for you is, I want your opinion on what Biden did most recently, which was only give $700 to Maui victims, give $24 million to Ukraine, and what would you have done in his place?
What would I have done? What I would have done is, I would have flown to Maui within the first couple of hours. I would have opened a DOJ investigation into every single one of the criminals that turned off the water and lied about it. I would have set up a basic operation, mobilized the United States military, and found every single kid and told the truth about what happened in Maui. Biden doesn't care about East Palestine, he doesn't care about Maui. The American people are expendable. They care about power. They have never cared about the American people. If they did, they would close the southern border. If they care about the American people, they care about urban gang violence. People are pawns for their agenda. They're expendable, and they always have been. Okay? I'll keep going as long as I can. I mean, yeah, so. You guys want me to keep going?
I'm a Trump supporter, wearing a Trump shirt. But I'd like to get your opinion on where you think Vivek fits into the future.
Say that again. I'm sorry, the mics are faced towards you, so I'm not hearing everything you're saying.
So I'm a Trump supporter wearing a Trump shirt, but I want to know where you think Vivek fits in the future.
Oh, Vivek. I think Vivek should be chief of staff when Donald Trump takes because Vivek is a very talented entrepreneur who works his tail off. Chief of staff is a very difficult position. He has all the skills. Do not underestimate. It's not just like people say VP. Just so you know, I mean, I've spent a lot of time in the White House. The VP has like no power. The chief of staff has all the power. So chief of staff will follow the orders. He sees the same worldview. So the vice president should be chosen separately. I think that Ron Johnson should be the vice presidential pick. Helps you win Wisconsin, and he's been unbelievably great on the vaccine issue, which for me is like one of the top issues. Vivek for chief of staff, he would go after the administrative state. He would work 20-hour days. He's built a big business. He's unbelievably smart. Doesn't forget a thing. He can handle the media. We have been lacking in a very high-functioning chief of staff position. So by the way, George W. Bush, not my favorite president, say what you will, he had a very, very talented White House office around him. They were high-functioning, high IQ, incredibly talented people. Same with Barack Obama. So I want to find the best person that we have that aligns with the MAGA agenda, that has the trust of the base. I think Vivek Ramaswamy for chief of staff would be amazing.
I just want to recognize the great work that the Visalia Republican Women's and Tulare King's Right to Life operations, getting events like this coordinated and having guests like you come and speak to Visalia. My question is, how do you, I would say that you're a largely online personality, much like Jack Posobiec. I mean, I could go on, but talking about like platforms like Real American News, how do you guys plan to, going into 2024, plan to break through legacy media like Fox News and how they keep dropping the ball regularly? I mean, I'll do the commenting for that, but because I still like to see you on there. But how do we, as I'm 29 years old as well, but how do we get some of the older generations on platforms like X? Not that I'm trying to endorse these platforms.
No, I think it's a really great question.
But how do we break through that and kind of get personalities like you to amp up the engagement on there going into the next presidential race?
So it's a great question. So look, I'm not going to bash Fox. A lot of people have. They were good to me for a lot of years, and right now things aren't great. But I actually remember when they were great to me, and I'm thankful for that. And I want them to get back to the network they once were. And I think a lot of you guys believe that. But right now, it's a really weird thing. So I'm not going to bash Fox because they were really, really great to me for a decade, and it really led to the rise of Turning Point USA, and for that I'm thankful. However, I think we need to be honest that just watching the same cable TV white noise is not how we're going to beat the left and take back the country. Here's my challenge to you, is you need to pursue podcasts and live streams and content that push you intellectually, not just the same 10-minute kind of white noise, Republican good, Democrat bad. I'm happy to give you a list. You also can take out your phone and subscribe to the Charlie Kirk Show. Very biased. Anybody listen, by the way? Anybody watch or listen? That's amazing. We do 3 podcasts a day. You guys can take out your podcast app. Super fan right there. But yeah, Jack Posobiec, Matt Walsh, Steve Bannon. We are seeing a new genre of content really come out in a very exciting way. And so my advice is that if you're out there and you feel as if after you watch cable TV, you're hungrier for truth than before you started watching it, then maybe spend your time listening to those podcasts or finding them. If you do not know, go to our Turning Point USA table. They will show you how to download the Rumble app. They'll show you how to work your phone. It's not a joke. It could be hard to understand how to navigate because what we have is a 2 or 3-step problem. If you're under the age of 30, it's not intimidating at all if I say to you, hey, go to this app, log in, and we're like, we're used to that. For some people that are 60 plus, they're like, I just want to turn on the TV and watch the thing. Right? I don't even mean that negatively. It's just, that's how it was.
Come on now.
But what do you mean I have to log in? Or I want it on the TV. I want it on that screen, not this screen. And why is it? It's all messed up, right? That's okay. I hear your pain. We're here to help you. I want to just push you. If you are like, boy, I just am not feeling like I'm getting the full picture. I feel as if I miss Tucker. I miss this. Let your heart not be troubled. There's amazing content out there on the right that you got to start listening to and supporting. Great question. Thank you so much. All right, we'll do a couple more.
Hi, Charlie. So I work within the public school system, and I started noticing something very concerning, is that there are more pride flags than American flags in our schools today, especially here in California. What can these parents do to protect their children, and what can we do to stop these public schools from indoctrinating our children?
First of all, I want to encourage you. We need teachers with virtue to stand up against this trash in our schools. And I never want to generalize. There's a lot of bad teachers out there, but we need strong, good teachers. We need teachers in the government school system, even if it's 1 out of 100, to say, no, I'm not doing that. Not going to happen. So you are so necessary, whether you do it covertly or outwardly. I just want to encourage you that it's unbelievably important. You could prevent a kid from transition, which could literally save his life. Like you have a call on your life in a mission field to help the innocent, one of the most important things. And so I just want to make sure you leave here with a sense of conviction and duty to fight for what is right. Parents, at the same time, if there is any way you can make it work, and I bet there is, do not send your kid to government school. I do this for a living. I'm literally professionally in the education space. I do not argue from authority very often. I do know this probably better than most. If you send your kid to a local government school, there are exceptions, maybe they're great around here, but be very careful because I cannot tell you how many parents come up and they say, oh, well, sent my kid to this school and they became intellectually and theologically and religiously unrecognizable. If homeschool is an option, do homeschooling. If private school is an option, do private schooling. If charter school is an option, do that. So that's my advice. But if government schools is the only option, then here's what you do. You get to know each and every single one of your teachers by name, and you check in with them every couple of weeks, and you pseudo-harass those government school teachers. And you're like, what are you teaching them? What's the curriculum? Send it to me. And you email Mrs. Smith or Mrs. this, and it will drive your kids nuts. Stop emailing my teacher. Like, no, we're doing this. You go in and demand meetings. Like, I don't like this. Why are you teaching 1619 Project? Why are you teaching queer theory? Why are you teaching drag queens? Why are you teaching anal sex for 12-year-olds? You have to play offense. By the way, they do in a lot of schools. And so if government school is the only option, that does not mean, I'm telling you, just to kind of retreat and hope and pray and play Russian roulette with your kid's future, because that's what you do when you send them to government schools. Instead, you must be actively involved, asking the tough questions. And honestly, what you'll find is that there are some good teachers too. Like this young man here tonight. God bless you, man. We need more. Two more. 1, 2. Will be the final question over here. Second to last question.
Mr. Kirk, we're happy to have you here. It's a pleasure. My name is Jody Jones. I'm an Angel family member. I know you know what
Thank you.
Exactly right. President Trump invited me back to the State of the Union in 2020.
Wow.
I was his personal guest.
I have a radio show now, a conservative radio show here in the San Joaquin Valley. A lot of these great people here have been on my show already. And I'm trying to get the message out. It's funny that you said that, how we need to get the message out. And this is where it starts right here. This is where the rubber meets the road, right? So, what I have to say is, vote, people. Vote. My big thing is immigration. Angel family member, my brother was murdered by an illegal immigrant. So, my question to you is, how are we going to fix this open border? I mean, I know if President Trump wins, we're going to fix it.
So, first of all, thank you, and sorry for the loss of your family. I have some radical opinions. I think we're being invaded currently by the cartels, and I think we need to sign a declaration of invasion. My personal opinion is that Texas needs to step up and secure the border themselves and tell the federal government to get in there. That's my personal opinion. This is not Texas now. This is a question of sovereignty. It's not going to happen. This is why they had to get rid of Kerry Lake. Because Kerry was going to do this. Kerry was a glitch in the matrix, and they did everything they could. Because Kerry made one mistake. She actually told them what they were going to do before she became governor. As soon as Kerry Lake said, I'm going to declare an invasion, the whole regime mobilized against Kerry Lake. Because it would have been this massive threat. Do not allow the media to propagandize you, everybody. What's happening in Ukraine is nowhere nearly as important what's happening to your own beloved nation on the southern border. Amen. It is a crime against humanity, what is happening on the southern border. It's a crime against kids. It's a crime against your local schools with drugs. It's a crime with guns. It's a crime with criminals. We have people with weapons coming across. We are basically allowing the cartels to run the entire southern border, and I have to be lectured about Vladimir Putin from our regime. I think we all need to simultaneously demand that it's all going to come down to Texas, and honestly, if Donald Trump is president day one, he can fix it. But if not, we need to start really planning this out, and it's time for Texas to step up and tell us why they're always telling us they're so tough. Last question. Advance.
Pastor from Bakersfield, California. Born in Washington, D.C., so I've seen politics since, I was a little kid. And my question that I want to ask you is simple as this. I appreciate your message here tonight. Can you speak on courage?
Yeah.
And what it's going to take. I talk to a lot of people, a lot of pastors, a lot of leaders, and that is the one thing. It's not about the issues. They understand, they know the issues are wrong or right. It's courage. And can you speak on it?
It's a great question. Courage takes no skill. Courage takes no training. It just takes the will. That's what's so amazing. Aristotle called it the ultimate virtue because he said without courage there are no other virtues.
Amen.
Think about it. There's no honesty. There's no justice. There is not even, he argued, truth without courage. It's really interesting. We are not largely a courageous country right now. We have courageous people here or there, but we can change it immediately. What is courage, if we had to define it? Courage is doing the right thing when you do not know the outcome. That's it. Courage involves a mystery. A mystery that you don't know how it's going to work. Courage is running for office. You're like, I'm not sure if I'm going to win. Courage is stepping up and serving your country. You don't know if you're going to come back and see your loved ones. That's courage. And here's the one thing I will say. We have a lot of believers and a lot of Christians here. If you are anything but courageous, then you are not a Christian. And I don't say that lightly, because I know that's a very serious statement. But if you are afraid all the time, your Christianity is fake. Because the only thing you should fear is the Lord. We have a generation of Christians that I'm afraid. The only thing I fear is seeing Almighty God and Him telling me I was a coward. He might tell me that I was a little bit outspoken, a little bit tough. Maybe I could have calmed it down a little bit. But more than anything else, you know who I don't want to look at? I don't want to look at my daughter one day, like most people will, and say, yeah, I was too afraid, while they took over the entire country. Most Americans are sitting idly by, hoping that it's going to get better. But it requires courage. And And that's why courage is so hard to find. God bless you, men. Thank you so much. Gotta make it really quick. We're already over time. We're gonna close down the facility, so yeah, really quick, 20 seconds.
I'm 15 and I go to school in Woodley. I have a question. I see Republicans really focus on drag queens in schools and a lot of that agenda being pushed, but I see them very hesitant to address school shooting and the fact that firearms are the #1 killer of children in America today. So I want to see your opinion on that and if it has anything to do with the very concerning amount of money that is funded to Republican lawmakers by the NRA and other gun lobbyists. And yeah, I want to hear your opinion on that.
What's your name again, sorry? So I'm going to do this just kind of lightly. Firearms are not the #1 cause of death for young people. First of all,
Amen.
The #1 cause of death for young people is abortion. That's a separate
Abortion.
issue. So 1 million young people die in the womb every single year. But let's zero in on this. Why Republicans, we get drowned out by the media? It's very simple. I'm sure I could get you to agree that banks and money is important, right? Sporting events, airports. So we guard all of those things with armed guards, people with guns. We should also guard our schools.
Amen.
With
Amen.
And we're coming at this from a great spot. Let me also ask you a question to think about. If you were a school shooter, would you choose a school with an armed guard or without an armed guard?
Amen.
What is the Republican response to these school shootings? We've passed bill after bill after bill. Speaker McCarthy passed a bill. You guys haven't. It just gets drowned out. It's very simple. Sporting events, airports, and banks pale in comparison to protecting our kids. We want single point of entry.
Yes.
We want to arm our teachers.
Yes.
We want to prevent these school shootings from ever happening. What we're not going to do, and let me tell you why we're not going to take people's guns away, is because the Second Amendment is not, and this is important, the Second Amendment is not for hunting. The Second Amendment is not for personal defense.
Amen.
The Second Amendment is there for, God forbid, we the people have to defend ourselves against a tyrannical government. Say hello to Ace here and thank him for coming after the event. And it really means a lot. God bless you, man. Thank you so much. Thank you.